Man must die. At the worst, he can but die a little sooner. I was having a major case of deja vu. Captured by the enemy again. Separated from Jen again. And another self-absorbed madman trying to figure out how to improve my day. Hagen had changed. The prospect of power corrupting his mind even more. Eating away at his sanity like cancer. The cancer I had just the cure for, courtesy of my trusty shooting iron.
Wakey, wakey! This is no time for sleep, James. I have grown fond of you, little pup. We shall unravel the last mysteries of this ancient place together. Behold, the entrance to Xiabalba, the land between shadows. This is where the last part of the heart lies. This is the tomb of the creators of the heart, whom the Mayans called Hun Kame and Wukub Kame.
Not another bloody story. Just kill me already.
You know, I'm not much of a killer. These men, however, they have been well educated in this respect. I'd really hate to demonstrate their skills.
Just get on with what you want from me, you goddamn son of a bitch!
You seem to have a talent for opening doors, little pup. So I want you to be a good boy and open the gate for me.
I'll open your damn gate, Hagen, and then I will kill you.
Americans, always with the drama. Once I am inside, death will be a concept worth revisiting.
Hello and welcome back to the final level of Deadfall Adventures. This is BioEnchanted and today we'll be going through Xiabalba. So let's see what we have in store here, shall we? Now, something I'll mention here, we do have a map in this area, or we can get one, but I just kind of forgot where it was and forgot to pick it up. So we'll go through the entire level without a map, but I have noticed all the treasures, so it's easy enough to find them in this level as well, because it's a relatively short level. One thing I do want to bring up again though is, wow, Hagen's elbows are terrible. I mean, they're so, like, they're animated in such a weird way. It's like there's two elbows going on in each shirt sleeve. It looks very off-putting. It's like those dolls that kind of have a cloth body, but plastic extremities, where the flesh colour is. So it's like hard plastic forearms and lower legs, or calves rather, but the rest of it is just stuffed cloth, so it often will get very wiggly. It looks like those, like old baby dolls kind of a thing. Let's just backpedal out of here. Luckily they kind of stagger the walls to be kind of nice to you, because otherwise you have no way of getting out in time. And it's a cool effect anyway. I like the staggered walls. It's more interesting than just two straight objects pushing together, because in this case you actually see the mechanism putting them closed as well. So it gives a little sense of realism to it. I mean, not so much realistic in that, oh, the mechanism still works after thousands of years in the isolation, but realism that you can see how the mechanism would technically work. But this level is kind of, it's more of a, I wouldn't say cinematic, but it's more of a kind of a denouement more than anything else, and a climax. Because we've already had our climax with fighting the god, basically. Now we only have left is Hagen. It's basically just wrapping up the situation here. So it's a lot quieter than the last couple of levels were. There's still quite a lot of fighting going on, but at the moment we actually haven't got any weapons, because they took them off us when they captured us. So we are currently completely unarmed, no torch, no nothing. Oh yeah, we have the torch, but we have nothing else.
So we meet again, my old enemy, Math.
This is a neat puzzle. I quite like this one because of where the solution is. Of course, let's set it up first. Remember, the bars are 5 and the little dots are 1. As you can see here from this corpse, his blood spells out the solution. We have to make the number 17. I really like that because it doesn't just outright give you the solution in the journal or anything. Like, you got to look at the journal and see the answer 17, and you can't see it anywhere else. You have to see it in that blood scene. And that's a pretty cool visual. I quite like the idea of that. It's a bit ridiculous, but it's like ridiculous in the just like kind of campy way. But it's like our 17 up, 3 bars and 2 dots. So let's move on, shall we? Also grab this treasure. It's pretty much just a gimme. I quite like the treasure placement in this level because it's got some pretty interesting visuals that all kind of fit the whole Xiabalba tone, like the whole afterlife theme, even though some of it is related to different mythologies, but we'll discuss that as we see them. I just find it quite interesting that they have a little bit of a thematic thing going on there. Let's cross over to that door we just saw open, shall we? I do quite like how quiet this level is, because it does a good job kind of building the tension. Because of course you're coming up to a final conflict. So a lot of this is kind of, and of course we're careful here, there's spikes in the ceiling. Of course that's a very obvious trap. The very obvious solution. But yeah, it's like, it's quiet, but that kind of helps build the tension a little bit, because you keep expecting things to happen, and then when it finally does happen, it's like a bit of release of the tension, but it keeps kind of building from there, because the fight's relatively simple. This is an interesting set piece, because we have no weapons still, we can't fight that guy directly. So all we have to do is light these 3 torches in the right sequence. I kind of got lucky with the right sequence this time. I think I just remembered that one was the first one. Let's just light all 3 torches. And there we go, they kill him for us. Because again, we have no weapons right now. And after he dies, the door opens. This part coming up to kind of a neat set piece, I like this part. I generally like this level because it's kind of, it's not got overly difficult parts like some of the other levels have, like the Mayan City for example, and it doesn't really have any parts that specifically break. A lot of the time, like, you don't get stuck to certain puzzle pieces like in some of the early levels with those mirrors, where you can easily get glued to them without realizing it. And it also, it's just generally, it's fairly basic puzzles that you don't have to really touch. You just have to figure out how to interact with them from afar, so there's a lot more kind of, it's a lot more stable as the level goes, and that makes it less frustrating to go through. And the fact that it's very puzzle heavy gives it a kind of an atmosphere as well, because of course you spend a lot of the time you having to solve the admittedly very basic puzzles, but it gives the same kind of idea. I like this little pistol, it's very good, little automated pistol thing. We don't get these much. I'm just getting used at them when we can. I quite like this labyrinth though, of like, just a path of weapons and enemies to kill with those weapons. And also, as you can see here, there's a perpetually shifting labyrinth, which is interesting. Well, not really a labyrinth, because labyrinths don't have dead ends, and there's clearly dead ends to the right there, but you get the idea. It's a perpetually shifting, not perpetually shifting, it's scripted, but it gives the feeling of being a perpetually shifting maze. Like, the walls always move in the same way, but the first time through the game you might not cotton on to that. So it gives a good feeling of the level being kind of pulling you into traps and things like that. Even though it's a very basic corridor in the way you actually play through it. Of course, we had 2 guys with shields there. I still quite able to dodge and weave around. That's pretty kind of, but it's good animations and stuff. It's better than the character animations, and believe it or not, this game is actually motion captured. It just doesn't really look it very well. I guess it's just very, very, very cheap motion capture. Then again, it's probably how they get the zombies looking that good. It's just they can't motion capture the people to look less stiff than the zombies. Oh, that's not really the problem as well. It's not the people are stiff, it's that they're way too loose. Their limbs kind of move in really bizarre ways that no body should move in. But of course we have these switches that open these little panels and the mazes too. And of course there's a very obvious end of the maze switch, so let's avoid that for now. This is leading to one of the more interesting visuals in this level I quite like. One of the more thematic ways of hiding treasures. Did anyone say anything about Greek mythology? I quite like that with the 2 gold pieces on the eyes of the statue thing. It's a neat visual, although it's a bit cheap to hide both pieces like that. Like 2 out of the 3 pieces all in one place. It's thematically, I like the way it works. I like the look of that. It's a pretty neat thing. It brings the whole afterlife thing into full effect, I think. Because that's of course where we're supposed to be heading towards through here. This is supposed to be the gate leading to Xiabalba. After all, I believe, Mayan, I will say, because that's what the game's saying, afterlife. Not sure if that's accurate, but I don't really know mythology very well on that level. Of course, it's a fairly basic puzzle. Just every time you go up, so do the platforms, so you have to just keep shooting the switches. With a bit of a bait and switch at the end, but we'll see that. For now, let's just shoot this next tier. I also quite like that it kind of like is gathering these tiers up into one kind of big platform sort of thing. So it's not just an elevator that's going up 3 times. It's kind of merging with itself to form a slightly bigger platform. I quite like the idea of that. It gives it more personality than the elevators in the game. Of course, now we have a bit of a bait and switch. You have to go through this way now. It'll take a little bit of time, but you have the audio cue there, so it's not as frustrating as it could be. So it could easily be in a very bad part of the puzzle if it didn't have that audio cue, prompting you, look to your right, you can hear something clicking to the right. Here we have some upgrade stuff, but we've already got all the upgrades done from the last level, but that's more for if the treasures in this level are more of a kind of a catch-up kind of a thing, whereas like, well, if you didn't catch all the treasures throughout the rest of the game, here's a few so you can get a few more upgrades if you didn't already get them. It's the game being a little merciful in the run up to the final boss, and I quite like that. That one's kind of a cheekily hidden one, just like, always look behind you at the beginning of a level, yes, but not really in the middle of the level often. I mean, looking to the right is fairly, like, if you don't already know you're meant to go to the left, you'll look to the right and see that, probably. But if you don't look to the right first, you'll probably miss it. So here's the primary puzzle of this level. So, well, at least we're setting up for the primary puzzle by lighting these 2 mirrors on either side of the room. And of course, we can see the primary part of the puzzle right in the middle there, which we'll be dealing with at the end of the level, pretty much. Well, close to the end anyway, but 2/3 of the way through the level, I'll say. Of course, we have more fights going on here. There are a couple of these little, like, corridor fight kind of things where they funnel a bunch of enemies to take down, but because they're all coming from one direction, it's not really very difficult. There's not really that much threat to it, unless you play badly. It's largely just kind of there to break up the knot in the other level with no combat whatsoever otherwise. Because otherwise the level would just be walking through corridors and solving puzzles, and that might kind of lose you a little bit if you were bang into the atmosphere. So this kind of gives you a little something to keep the tension up. Because of course you can still be attacked, as you can tell, in between each segments of the puzzle, so it keeps kind of a little bit of danger going on there. I mean, the problem with using these traps a lot of the time is like this particular one, because it's just a spear, it's very easy to miss. So it's honestly just safe to just use the bullets and just deal with it. But of course, also these guys seem to be a lot more resistant to flashlight, given how quickly we were flashlighting the previous set guys. In the end of the previous level, I mean. Because when we were dealing with those guys just before the actual boss, they were melting to the flashlight pretty much. They were lighting up. Although that may have to do with the weapons as well. The weapons may have individually stronger flashlights. I'm not entirely certain if that's the case. Or if that's just confirmation bias, but that's kind of how it feels. So of course, here's the second mirror. Making sure I'm not missing anything. Because there's a treasure coming up around here as well, but I can't quite remember at this point in the recording where it was. So here we go, that's like the second flashlight thing, the second mirror I mean. I quite like how this puzzle comes together, it's kind of a neat thing. I quite like that it's one big puzzle throughout the entire level. Again, it gives a good kind of feeling of finality. It's not like a bunch of little puzzles like all the previous levels. This is one final puzzle to open the gate to Xiabalba. One big 40-minute long puzzle. Well, 30 minutes, I didn't count the cutscenes. But first, one final big fight coming up before the puzzle itself. And of course there are more fights after this one, but you know what I mean. One more fight in the way of the puzzle itself. And here we actually get a little bit hairy, because hey, as you can see I'm very low on ammo for this thing. But I make decent use of the traps in this one, so let's just have a little fun with this, shall we? There we go. I could have used that better, but I'm not used to using traps in this game because I don't do it much. But I do like how strong the whole thematic thing of gold is in this kind of, in the game generally. Like, you're collecting the treasures to upgrade yourself, but also the enemies turn gold when they go fully saturated. I like the visual of that. It's a very striking image when the games go completely gold instead of like any other shade of yellow. Also, it helps very obviously visually see, I say visually see, you know what I mean, it helps it be more obvious, when you actually like where they are compared to all the other enemies in the area, for example. Like, otherwise, you end up with an area flooded with enemies. You could end up like potentially getting a little bit lost in which one's saturated or not. So to go such a bright colour makes it very easy to see. And of course, these guys, remember, some of these are conquistadors, they have guns. Until you flashlight them, in which case they run away. And they wouldn't mean they, in which case they drop their guns and run straight after you because they want to punch you now. Yeah, this got actually kind of a bit heavy here because I'm now down to this crap gun. It's just like, yeah, I'm feeling that this gun's not as good as the other guns. I'm really feeling it now. I had a good pistol and wasted all the ammo, and I've got a bad pistol and I'm stuck with it. But it's got infinite ammo, so that's pretty nice. I believe that's done now. That wall's just reloaded in. So here's on the way to the puzzle, but also to our left we have another thing to grab. I keep saying one last one, I don't really mean it. I believe this is actually the last treasure. Yeah, this is the last treasure in the entire game, and the last upgrade point just before the big puzzle. So it's all very fitting with how everything's placed. Get some better weapons, of course, with short ammo. And let's solve this puzzle, shall we?
The land between shadows.
Basically, we have to line up these shadows so they match the picture in the notebook we have that I don't recall if we actually look at. But this doesn't do anything yet because it's not actually, you can see the middle gear is not connected, so we have to use these 3 levers to fix that by pulling it backwards first. We can do this little star thing in the middle, or the sun rather, because of course this is dealing with the sun god, so of course you have to line up the sun first. There we go. We basically have to complete the scene of, I believe it's one of the 2 kings being killed by the sun god. I think that's what we're seeing here. There's the image that we have to recreate. And of course, physically, the last thing we see before we open the gates of Xiabalba is an image of death. Again, with the whole like gold in the eyes thing from the previous collectible and now this, it's all kind of coming to a decent theme that I quite like. Apparently, Xiabalba is Mayan for giant skull. Okay, fine. And yes, I did basically steal that quote from El Dorado, but I like that movie, so, you know. The Road to El Dorado from DreamWorks is a pretty good movie. So here we go, let's head towards that door that opens, which you may recognize was actually in that previous combat arena. It's just, it's weird that the game makes you double back here, because it feels like the passage to get back should be further clockwise, because it kind of completes the circuits and feels neater. The fact you have to double back like this just makes it feel kind of weird and messy. It kind of breaks the flow of the level. So of course, this is going to be a fight. Let's deal with it, shall we? I do also like that they stop covering their eyes when they get in line with the actual flashlight, even when they're approaching you. It's just generally, the enemies are generally the best animated parts of this game. And then again, the other things you're seeing the most, so it kind of makes sense to be the best parts of the game. At least I got one last go of a trap, so that's pretty nice. So now let's head down this ramp, shall we? You can still see the skeletons as well left behind when you killed the mummies. I mean, it probably does a thing where when enough of them spawn, it ends up despawning some of them, but it's still a nice little visual to remind you there was a thing there, it's gone now. So let's head back towards that massive wall we opened, shall we? And of course, fittingly for this game, the final fight, the normal civilian fights anyway, is between both undead and Nazis and us. So it's kind of, well, not Nazis actually, they're the Middle Eastern guys he hired. But you know, it's like it's a neat kind of bookend to the whole central conflict of you versus everyone else. Because it's like everyone's basically like fighting for Xiabalba at this point. It's a neat sort of course from here we can't really hit anything with the flashlight. That guy was close enough. Generally, it's like, I quite like the idea of this, that this is kind of the culmination of all the sides all fighting for Xiabalba. Us to stop the other two guys, us to stop the German getting there, and the undead to stop the German getting there, and the undead to stop us from getting there. Everyone's just trying to stop everyone else getting to Xiabalba. And I quite like how it's not that chaotic, it's a fairly basic fight with not that many enemies. But thematically, I quite like how it bookends the overall conflict before the final boss. Now, at least we're kind of helping the Nazis. Keep forgetting they're not the Nazis. We keep helping the Middle Eastern guys. That's nice. Now let's just take care of them. I think that's all that's left, because now they're concentrating on us. And there we are. So, final puzzle in the game. I like the look of the big skull, it's silly. But of course here, we need to make them cry. So let's cause a little ocular trauma, shall we? I mean, this is the Bridge of Tears. As I'll pull out in a minute.
I destroyed every priceless piece of cultural heritage I could find. You should be safe now.
I am. Go get Hagen. He's already crossed the Bridge of Tears, heading for the tomb.
You won't get away this time.
James, wait!
I know. You regret all the terrible things you've said about me. You've grown quite fond of me by now. You want me to be careful.
Actually, I just wanted to tell you to put an extra bullet in Hagen's head for me.
Oh, well, I'll do my best.
You always do. I'll catch up with you. Now go!
Let's take care of Hagen, shall we?
You're an extraordinary man, Mr. Quarterman. I have to admit.
Can't say the same thing about you, you crazy megalomaniac!
As usual, you fail to see the broader picture. Xibalba is more than just another temple. It is a stronghold, built around the very gateway to the underworld. The power to rule over the very soul of death itself, Mr.
And you really think this power should be in the hands of a mere human?
Let alone a nut job like you?
Ignorant man raised questions that wise man answered 1,000 years ago. It is not a question of moral, whether one should seize a chance like this or not. If it can be done, it must be done. Such is the composition of human nature, Mr. Quarterman.
I've noticed how over-animated his mouth is, well, his tongue just flapping around like mad in there. And also, yeah, typo in the thing, he meant moral, not morale. Completely different things. But of course, here we just need to wait until he pokes his head out and shoot him. But of course, he has a rocket launcher and grenades, so we have to be very careful not to, well, I mean TNT, so we have to be very careful not to get blown up. Because all of his attacks right now will try and blow us up. So let's not get blown up. The main problem with this part of the fight is seeing him. Because he's often like on the other side of this massive cube and you have to kind of work out exactly, there he is. That's always helpful when he shoots the wall. But yeah, you always have to be kind of like wary of where he is on the giant cube. It's kind of a ridiculous thing because you can't really see the boss a lot of the time. You just have to kind of hope he's going to be there. And here we can't see him on this side, we have to just kind of hope he's on a different side, but he won't be. He's just kind of hanging out right in the middle, being ridiculous, I think, right now. That's just how this guy goes. It's a fairly basic fight, though. If you just keep running in circles and keeping an eye out for when you can shoot him, you'll do fine. And of course, we have an ammo box over here. If we don't step on TNT. There he is. Keep filling him full of bullets. I mean, filling him full of bullets, rather. Hagen the Human Clip. When we find him, there he is. Stop blowing us up, mate. Put bullets in you. There we are. This part's kind of weird because you think it has something to do with light.
Tear down the pillars that hold our reality.
Tear down pillars? Not a bad idea.
But no, it's a fairly basic puzzle fight. We just need to blow up all these pillars and we've won. That's all we have to do now. Blow up the pillars, and you can probably see where this is going. But of course, the main problem is hitting the pillars with the grenade launcher. I mean, RPG rather. Because you can see sometimes it can just be a little bit kind of not quite there, and now we're out of RPGs. Now we have to just go grab more ammo from the ammo box in the corner. And then switch back to the RPG again and keep blowing up the pillars, because that's basically this fight. I mean, you'd expect, because given the rest of the game, that it would have to do anything to do with lights-based combat, like you have to shine the flashlight at something, but nope. You just straightforwardly blow up the environment around him until he goes away. But you have to be very close to the pillars to really hit them, because the rocket goes in a weird trajectory otherwise. It's quite funny that they don't actually blow up, they just kind of fall off. There we are.
They're making sure nobody will ever enter Xiabalba again.
Agent Goodwin, glad to have you back in one piece.
More or less. Where's Quatermain?
He has already returned to Egypt.
He just took the gold and left?
Most of it, but thanks to his collector's spirit, we won't have to worry about finances for a while. Though the gold seems to have lost the invigorating qualities he talked about.
Professor, would you mind if I took some time off?
Of course not. I hear Egypt is lovely this time of the year.
There is no journey upon this earth a man may not make if he sets his heart to it. No mountain he cannot climb, no desert he cannot cross. If he holds his life in his hands, counting it as nothing, ready to keep it or lose it as heaven above may order. Such are the words of my great-grandfather, Alan Quatermain, a man whom I have wrongly disrespected for most of my life. And with this I leave you, my esteemed readers, to choose whether to remain an unbeliever such as I was in what now feels like a different life. Humbly yours, James Lee Quatermain.
7 temples. And we've only seen 3.
Plenty more material then for me to write another story about our adventures.
Which you can never publish. James,
Jen,
you can never publish your stories.
don't worry. Nobody believed me anyway.
There's a few things about the ending that I quite like there. For example, with the skull, when you blow it up, you expect it to just kind of crush him, but I quite like that it actually just cries lava on him when it falls over. It's a nice visual thing, and it's also kind of fitting given the whole Bridge of Tears, the whole like motif of the crying statues from before we crossed it. It's a neat little kind of a callback to 10 seconds ago kind of moment. Also, the implication that maybe the heart of Atlantis wasn't the only thing that makes people stronger when you go in the pantheon, because it seems to imply with the gold having invigorating qualities that basically that was just an exaggerated thing of what's been happening to James Lee Quatermain as he collects the collectibles throughout the game and uses them to power himself up. It seems like it's sort of that was a much more piecemeal version of what happened to Hagen right at the end there, filling himself with Atlantean magic and becoming unkillable by conventional means. I mean, I know lava's pretty conventional, but he was cried on by a giant skull. That's not that conventional. But overall, I enjoy this game, despite the poor controls, the awkward shooting, and just general kind of bad animations, kind of lame plot. It's got a lot of problems to it, so I can see why it was poorly reviewed. But I quite like the level design and the way the collectibles are spaced out and hidden. They have some interesting puzzles there, some frustrating puzzles, but given the wide variety of puzzles, it's not surprising some of them are frustrating. That always happens in these kind of games. I mean, you know, there are some puzzles in Portal that I find kind of annoying, but at least that game controls well, you know what I mean. But yeah, this was a one of the LPs of longer videos, so I'm kind of glad that's over now. So I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly did. I picked it up at a lark. It was even one of those like weird copies in the store that's like the display only copies do not sell kind of a thing, but it's got a sticker on it anyway because it's a used game store and who cares. And overall, I like the way this game presents itself, despite the problems it clearly has. It's clearly kind of a maybe single A, maybe even B kind of a game, but it's a fun enough one, and I quite like the way they do different things with the lighting puzzles in certain situations. Like for example, with some of the combat, for example, the skylight room in the Mayan ruins was really interesting. I mean, the Mayan catacombs level, and aspects of that, like taking down enemies with the giant mirrors, are kind of fun. Overall, it's got a lot of interesting ideas that just aren't programmed as well as they could have been. And that might be down to budget constraints and time constraints and just general constraints. It seems like the kind of thing where it was the best game they could have made given the budget and time they had. So I'm willing to give them a pass on that because it's still alright as games go. Certainly not the worst game I've played for the channel even, and it's one I just can't help but like in some way, despite the fact that it's nowhere near as good as some of the good games I've played for this channel, like Get Even for example, which had similarly good collectible hiding and stuff like that, but had a vastly better plot and gameplay. But then again, why go comparing games to each other? Just enjoy them for what they are. That's what I do. So, I'm glad. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye. Well, I'll see you in the next LP rather, when the current crop of LPs I'm in the middle of is over. So, see you then. Bye.